Hi, good afternoon. Diego here. And today I want to talk about a very important grammatical topic, which is the relative clauses. Relative clauses are used when we are creating sentences and we want to refer to a subject without repeating the subject again. So it makes it sounds more natural. It provides connection in the sentence and it gives it a better flow. And if you use this, you will make your English sound way more advanced than before. So here I have a small graphic about the relative clauses. We have the defining relative clauses and the non-defining relative clauses. The defining relative clauses are the ones that give relevant information. So this information is relevant for the sentence. What it means is that if you delete the relative clause, the sentence wouldn't have sense. The sentence would be incomplete, kind of hard to understand. Instead, the non-defining are the ones that give extra information. It means that in a sentence, you can even delete the relative clause and the sentence would be clear, would be able to be understood by people. So now we are going to observe the relative clauses that we use. When we want to refer to people, we can use who or that. For referring things, we can use which or that. For referring places, we can use where. For referring times, we can use when. For possessions, we can use whose. And the non-defining are who, which, when, where, and whose. Now, I'm going to give more examples so that everything that I just said is clearer. Here we have some examples of how the relative clauses can make your sentences improve. For example, here, the mechanic fixed my broken car. Point, and then we continue. He was very professional. This is grammatically correct. There's nothing wrong with that. But what if we apply relative clauses in the sentence? Would it be better? The mechanic who fixed my broken car was very professional. This sounds way more advanced. And instead of generating two sentences, what we are doing is one single sentence, and that makes sense and sounds good, and it's very advanced. So I truly recommend you to start using this so that you save more time when you are writing and you sound way more natural. Another example, we ate Ecuadorian ceviche last summer. The ceviche was so tasty. Now, how would it be if we use some of the relative clauses? The Ecuadorian ceviche that we ate last summer was so tasty. Now, how we know if it is whether defining or non-defining in those sentences? The mechanic who fixed my broken car was very professional. If we grab this, that is the relative clause, and we delete it, we just simply delete it like that. The mechanic was very professional. Does it sound good? Does it make sense? It does make sense, right? So it means that we can apply commas. And this is a non-defining relative clause. Now let's check the other. The Ecuadorian ceviche that we ate last summer was so tasty. That we ate last summer. This is, all of those words is the relative clause. We are going to do the test again. The Ecuadorian ceviche was so tasty. Does it make sense? It does make sense. But this information, is it crucial or not for the sentence that we ate last summer? It is very crucial. It is very important. So in this case, we are not going to add any comma, and this is going to remain like that. In those two examples, the relative clause were referring to a noun in the sentence itself. So, who refers to the mechanic, and that refers to the Ecuadorian ceviche. We can distinguish a non-defining relative clause when it can be removed from the sentence and the sentence can still be understood. Also, the non-defining clauses are followed by commas. So here we have relative clauses, defining, non-defining, defining, give information that is necessary, and non-defining, give information that is not necessary. Here are some extra examples, like my brother who lives in China is visiting for Christmas. Here are the students who still need to finish their tests. This is defining. Who still need to finish their tests. If you delete it, here are their students and nothing more. It doesn't make sense. If we truly want to observe if those sentences are defining or undefining and confirm if we are not making any mistakes, one of the ways that we can do it is by, here's the video that explains it very clearly. I also recommend you, if you can, watch some videos that can explain it deeply. We can always use AI, not for cheating, not for copying, but for developing our talents, for developing our skills. And we can ask it whether or not it is defining or non-defining, because we have to be able to recognize. Both of your examples contain relative clauses, the parts of the sentences starting with who and that. One is defining and the other is non-defining. The mechanic who fixed my broken car was very professional. Type non-defining, also called non-restrictive. Why? The information between the commas, who fixed my broken car, is just extra, bonus information. If you take it out, the sentence still makes perfect sense. Just as I said, the mechanic was very professional. We already know exactly which mechanic you're talking about, likely the only one relevant to the conversation. Clue, notice the commas. Non-defining clauses are always separated from the rest of the sentence by commas. Think of them like hooks holding up a sign with extra details. 2. The Ecuadorian ceviche that we ate last summer was so tasty. Type defining, also called restrictive. Why? This information is essential to the meaning of the sentence. It limits or defines exactly which Ecuadorian ceviche you are talking about. Yes, because if I say the Ecuadorian ceviche was so tasty, but which one? The one that we ate last week, the one that we ate when? The one that we ate last summer. The reason that you aren't talking about just any Ecuadorian ceviche in the world. You are especially talking about the one that we ate last summer. If you remove that clause, the sentence becomes vague. The Ecuadorian ceviche was so tasty. Which one? That question is left. Clue: there are no commas, and it uses the word that. In English, we only use that for defining clauses. That's something very important. And that's also in this part. We use that with the defining. For the non-defining, we do not use that. Quick cheat sheet to tell them apart. Feature. We ask ourselves, is it necessary? Yes. The sentence loses its specific meaning without it. Non-defining, no. It's just an extra detail and it is between commas. Commas, if there's no comma, then it's defining. If it's between commas, then it's non-defining because you can remove it and it still makes sense. Can you see that? If you see that in the sentence, then it's defining. And if you don't see, you see which, who, other kind of relative clauses, it's not defining. Now that we have confirmed that part, we are going to observe additional examples of this grammar structure. Defining essential info, no commas. The actor who starred in that movie won an Oscar. The actor won an Oscar. If we say the actor won an Oscar, we would ask ourselves, but who? Which actor? The one who starred in that movie. So for that reason, this is necessary. Tom Hanks, who starred in that movie, won an Oscar. We already know who Tom Hanks is. So this is extra information. Tom Hanks is already a well-known person who starred in that movie, won an Oscar. It's not like there are a lot of Tom Hanks in the world. So the information provided between the commas, you automatically know that it is non-defining. And for that reason, it uses commas. The car that has a broken headlight belongs to Mark. If we say the car belongs to Mark, it could also make sense, but only if in the context of the conversation you are pointing at a certain car. But imagine that you're between a lot of cars. So it wouldn't make sense because you would ask, but which car? You need more specifications. For a reason, it always also depends in the context of the conversation that you are into. So the car that has a broken headlight belongs to Mark. His Tesla, which has a broken headlight, belongs to Mark. His Tesla, comma, if it is between commas, we already know it's non-defining. So we can say his Tesla belongs to Mark, and it wouldn't be totally okay, totally right, and it would make sense because he only has one Tesla. The broken headlight is just a detail, an additional detail in that case. We can see that it is similar, the one that we see here and the one that we see there, but it always depends on the context, as I said. So you simply got to read and notice if there are commas or no commas in order to tell if it's defining or non-defining. I visited the city where my mother was born. If you simply say, I visited the city, but which city? Nobody will know which city you visit. So you got to tell extra information, extra context. So yes or yes, these have to go. So it is defining. I visited Paris, where my mother was born. We already know the city is Paris. The birth location is bonus trivia. I visited Paris would be okay because people would already know where you visited. If you delayed where your mother was born, people would still know that you are visiting Paris, but in here, on the other hand, you didn't tell where it was. So in this case, this is non-defining. A student who study every day usually pass the exam. The medical students who study every day pass the exam. The company which makes those smartphones is bankrupt. Apple, which make those smartphones, is incredibly wealthy. Now, the relative clauses. Whom is used for people, for talking about people. Which is for talking about animals and things. That is used for people, animal, things. It's used for everything. That is the most overused and most generalized. So whenever you can, if you can use the others, it will be good as well, so that your English sounds way more advanced. But if you're talking something very crucial, something very important, something that is definitely a defining relative clause, then I suggest to use that. But if you have other option, try to use one of the others. Whose is for talking about the possession of someone or something. Where is to talk about a place. When is to talk about or referring to time expressions. And why is for explaining a reason why something. Here we are going to notice some examples, and we are going to try to figure out if those sentences are defining or non-defining. Here we have, my friend who recently moved here is a great cook. If we delete who recently moved here, it says my friend is a great cook. It makes sense. It sounds complete. So we can say that this clause right here, who recently moved here, is definitely a non-defining relative clause. It can be removed and it will still make sense. And you can also notice this because it's between commas. The second one, my laptop, which I bought years ago, still works well. My laptop still works well. This is a non-defining one. It's between commas, and if you say my laptop still works well, it makes sense. It also sounds complete as well. It doesn't need any complement. The third one, the car that I bought is blue. This is defining. It is not between commas, and also it's crucial information, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to guess if your car is blue or is red or is black or yellow or what color it is. The other one, the woman whose car, the woman whose car was stolen reported it to the police. This is defining because if you delete whose car was stolen, it's just simply say the woman reported it to the police. Reported what? Doesn't make sense. It's incomplete. So you need that relative clause for the sentence to make sense. We spent our holidays at the beach where we made great memories. Where we made great memories, this is non-defining. This is an additional information that can be deleted. It's between a comma and between a point. So this can be deleted when it's between commas, and also when it's between comma and point. Because if we say we spent our holidays at the beach, it makes sense and it sounds complete. Then you mention where we made great memories. You know that you can delete that as well, and the sentence would still make sense. This is the time when we celebrate. This is defining because this is referring to the time when you celebrate. So if you say this is the time for what? What's that? The time, but for what? You are giving no context. So you cannot delay that part because otherwise the sentence would be a nonsense. You need that. the last sentence, that is the reason why I am upset. That is the reason why I am upset. This is defining clause, definitely. We can notice it is not between commas, and also if you delete why I am upset, you just simply say that is the reason. That is the reason. It sounds completely weird. That is the reason for what? You're not explaining, you're giving no context. So this has been the class so far, and I would like to make more exercises for this class. One exercise about identify and punctuate directions. Read the sentences below. Decide if the relative clause is defining or non-defining. Add commas where necessary. My brother, in this case, we are going to write my brother who lives in New York is coming to visit next week. My brother, and then I would add comma, definitely, comma, my brother is coming to visit next week. And there says, there's extra context, so be careful, maybe I'm mistaken. I have 3 brothers, so this tells you which one. Okay. So if you have 3 brothers and this tells me which brother it is, this is not whatever additional information. This is crucial for distinguishing, because otherwise I wouldn't know which brother it is. So my brother who lives in New York is coming to visit next week. This is a defining. This is a D. This is a D. Definitely, this is a D. This is a defining. That's the first one. Then Paris is the capital of France. Paris is the name of a city, which is the capital of France, is my favorite city. Paris, comma, and comma, Paris is my favorite city. This is a non-defining. Because when you say the capital of France, that is additional information. I think that everybody already knows it. There's no more Paris. There's only one Paris in the world. So Paris is my favorite city. Sounds good. The car which my dad bought last month has already broken down. Then we are going to ask which car? The car that my dad bought last month has already broken down. For me, this is defining, because if we don't have that information, we wouldn't know which car it is. So I'm going to write this is defining. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter who wrote Harry Potter used to be a teacher. Here we are. If it is already known that she's the writer of Harry Potter, then we can add comma. And you simply say J.K. Rowling used to be a teacher, and we can say this is a non-defining, because it wouldn't be needed if people already know her and people know that she's the writer of Harry Potter series. The students studied hard. The students whom studied hard passed the exam easily. Only the ones who studied pass. Students who, I'm going to make an extra question to AI. It is when to use who and whom. Because the only difference is that it have an N in the spelling as well. The easiest way to remember the difference between who and whom is to use a simple pronoun non-trait. It all comes down to whether the word is doing the action or receiving the action. Ask yourself the question and answer it using he, they, or him, them. If the answer is he or they, use who. If the answer is him or them, use whom. Okay, I think that with that explanation, it's clear that it's who. The students who studied hard pass exam, only the ones who studied fast. So this is crucial. This is defining class definitely. My smartphone which I bought only last year is already lagging. My smartphone is already lagging. I could say my smartphone is already lagging, but if you have various smartphones, I wouldn't know. But it have no additional context, so it's definitely for me non-defining. I would say it is non-defining. The restaurant we had dinner last night was fantastic. Where? This is where. The restaurant where. If we say the restaurant was fantastic, we are going to ask ourselves, what restaurant? Or which restaurant? Where we had dinner last night. So this is crucial. This is defining, definitely. Sentence number 8, Mona Lisa was painted by Leonardo da Vinci, hands in the Louvre. Wait. Was painted. I think this is obvious that it was painted by him, so I'm going to say this is non-defining. When it is obvious information, you put the commas and you think that this is undefining. That's how it is. People who eat a balanced diet generally live longer. This is defining because if you don't add that information, then you would ask, which people live longer? My grandmother who is 85 years old still goes jogging every morning. This is defining. Without this, maybe you have two grandmothers and you don't know which one it is. Those were my answers. Now let's check if I did some mistakes as I have the answers down below. First one, defining. Yes, just as I said. The second one, non-defining. The third one is defining. Four ones, non-defining. Number 5, defining. Number 6, non-defining. Number 7, I have defining. Defining number 8, non-defining. Defining and defining. Number 9 and 10. Defining and okay, number 10 is non-defining. Let's see why. I just failed on number 10, apparently. needs comma sentence. My grandmother, who is 80 years old, still goes to me every morning. It can be also like that. I mean, it can definitely be like that as well. But the problem is that you never know the context. Like if you have various grandmas or you only have one, because you only have one, then it is definitely non-defining. Well, this was the class for today about relative clauses and its explanation. Thank you so much for being here and keep practicing English. Goodbye.